The massive ship called Eternal Dawn floated in space like a metal city among the stars. It was the biggest and most important ship in the Galactic Alliance fleet. Inside its long hallways and bright rooms, thousands of beings from different worlds worked together. The ship's captain was Admiral Zexthara, a tall creature with blue skin and 4 arms from the planet Velkari. Today was supposed to be an easy day. The fleet was moving through hyperspace to reach a distant star system. But something went wrong, deep inside the ship's engine room. A loud alarm started ringing through every corridor. Lieutenant Jake Morrison was drinking coffee in the human section when the alarm began. He was a young man from Earth with brown hair and steady hands. Jake had been working on spaceships for 5 years, but he still felt new compared to the alien engineers who had been doing this job for hundreds of years. "What's happening?" asked Petty Officer Lisa Rodriguez as she ran into the room. Lisa was shorter than Jake, with dark hair tied back and grease stains on her uniform. She had been fixing a broken door when the alarm started. Jake looked at his computer screen. Red warning messages were flashing everywhere. "Something's wrong with the main engine," he said. "The quantum core is having problems." The quantum core was the heart of the ship. It created the power that kept everything running. Without it, the lights would go out, the air would stop moving, and the ship would die in the cold darkness of space. Jake and Lisa ran toward the engine room. The hallways were full of alien crew members moving quickly. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few looked like walking trees. All of them looked worried. When they reached the engine room, they saw Chief Engineer Rithmal standing in front of the quantum core. Rithmal was an Azanite, a species that looked like tall gray beings with large heads and 6 fingers on each hand. His people were known throughout the galaxy as the best engineers. The quantum core was a huge sphere made of strange metal that seemed to bend light around it. Normally, it glowed with a steady blue light and made a soft humming sound. But now, it was flashing angry red and making loud crackling noises. "The containment field is failing," Rithmal said to his team of alien engineers. His voice was calm, but Jake could see worry in his large black eyes. "I have never seen a failure pattern like this." The alien engineers worked quickly with their advanced tools. They had computers that could solve problems in seconds and machines that could fix almost anything. But nothing was working. Every time they tried to stop the quantum core from shaking, it got worse. Admiral Zexthara entered the engine room with her 4 arms crossed behind her back. She was taller than everyone else, and her blue skin had silver markings that showed her high rank. "How long until complete failure?" she asked. "At this rate, maybe 2 hours," Rithmal replied. "If the containment field breaks completely, the explosion will destroy the entire ship and everything within 10,000 kilometers. Jake felt his stomach drop. 10,000 kilometers meant the explosion would also destroy the other ships in the fleet. Thousands of beings would die. "What about the enemy?" Admiral Zexthara asked. Through the ship's windows, Jake could see distant flashes of light. The Void Swarm was coming. The Void Swarm was not alive like other species. It was made of machines that ate planets and turned everything into more machines. The Alliance fleet was the only thing standing between the Void Swarm and billions of innocent people. "Our weapons are offline," said another alien engineer. "Without the quantum core, we cannot fight." Admiral Zexthara looked around the room at all the engineers. Her people had been building spaceships for 3,000 years. The Azanites had been engineers for even longer. Other species in the room had knowledge that went back tens of thousands of years, but none of them knew how to fix this problem. Jake watched the alien engineers work. They moved their tools in perfect patterns and spoke in mathematical equations that hurt his head to hear. Everything they did was exact and precise, but the quantum core kept getting worse. "Excuse me," Jake said quietly. Nobody heard him over the noise of the failing engine. "Excuse me," he said louder. Admiral Zexthara turned to look at him. Her 4 eyes studied him for a moment. Jake was just a human, and humans had only joined the Alliance 5 years ago. Most aliens still thought humans were primitive compared to the other species. "Yes, human," she said. Jake's mouth felt dry. "Could we take a look at the quantum core? Maybe we might see something different." Some of the alien engineers made sounds that Jake thought might be laughter. Rithmal's large head moved in what might have been a shake. Human technology is barely 500 years old, he said. This quantum core uses principles your species has not yet discovered. I know we don't know as much as you do, Jake said, but sometimes a fresh pair of eyes can help. Back on Earth, we have a saying about not seeing the forest for the trees. Lisa stepped up beside him. We have different ways of looking at problems, she added. It might be worth a try. Admiral Zexathara looked at the quantum core, which was now shaking so hard that the whole room was vibrating. Sparks were flying from the alien engineer's tools, and several of them were backing away from the core. Very well, she said finally. But do not touch anything. Only observe. Jake and Lisa walked closer to the quantum core. The other engineers watched them with expressions that ranged from curious to annoyed. Jake pulled out his simple handheld scanner, a basic tool that looked like a toy compared to the alien equipment. As he studied the reading, something caught his attention. The failure pattern had a rhythm to it. It was not random like the aliens thought. It was following a pattern, but not the kind of pattern that advanced computers would recognize. Lisa was looking at the core from a different angle. She tilted her head and listened to the sound it was making. Jake, she said quietly, this reminds me of something. What? Remember when my grandfather's old car engine used to knock, right before it needed a new timing belt? Jake looked at her, then back at the quantum core. Lisa was right. The pattern was familiar, but not from anything they had learned about advanced alien technology. It was familiar from Earth, from the simple machines that humans had been building and fixing for generations. Jake and Lisa spent the next 3 hours in the engine room while the alien engineers continued their work. The quantum core was getting worse every minute. The red flashing was faster now, and the crackling sounds were so loud that everyone had to wear ear protection. Lisa sat on the floor with her back against a wall, drawing pictures on a piece of paper. She was not using the advanced computer systems that the aliens used. Instead, she had a simple pencil and was making rough sketches of what she saw. This is how the energy is moving, she said to Jake, showing him her drawing. It looked like waves on water with some waves bigger than others. It's not steady like it should be. It's bouncing around. Jake nodded. He was looking at numbers on his basic scanner. The numbers kept changing, but he started to see a pattern. Look at this, he said. Every 47 seconds, the energy jumps up. Then it drops down. Then it jumps again. That's exactly like my grandfather's car, Lisa said. When the timing belt was loose, the engine would run rough. It would speed up and slow down in a rhythm. Rithmal heard them talking and walked over. His tall, gray form cast a shadow over them. Human engines are simple chemical combustion, he said. This is a quantum field that manipulates space and time. There is no comparison. Lisa looked up at him. But energy is energy, right? Whether it's from burning gas or from quantum fields, it still has to flow in a controlled way. The physics are completely different, Rithmal replied. Your combustion engines operate on principles that are millions of times less complex. Jake stood up and walked closer to the quantum core. The heat from it made his face feel warm. Can you show us exactly what the quantum field is supposed to look like when it's working, right? Rithmal touched a control panel and a three-dimensional picture appeared in the air. It showed the quantum field as a perfect sphere with energy flowing in smooth, even patterns. Everything was balanced and precise. Now show us what it looks like right now, Lisa said. The picture changed. Now the sphere looked like it was wobbling. The energy was flowing in jerky movements, starting and stopping in an uneven rhythm. Lisa stared at the picture for a long time. Then she started drawing. Again. Jake, remember when we had to fix the water pump on the space station last year? The one that kept starting and stopping? Jake remembered. The water pump had been broken for weeks. The station's engineers could not figure out what was wrong. All the parts were working, but the pump would not run smoothly. Then Jake and Lisa found that a small valve was partly blocked. The blockage was not big enough to stop the water completely, but it made the pressure jump up and down. The quantum field is acting like it has a blockage, Jake said, but not a physical blockage, something else. What if it's a feedback loop? Lisa asked. What if the containment field is trying to correct itself, but the correction is causing the problem? Jake looked at the three-dimensional picture again. He imagined the quantum field like water trying to flow through a pipe. If something was blocking part of the flow, the water would build up pressure. Then it would burst through the blockage, but then the blockage would form again. We need to see the containment field controls, he said. Rithmal looked annoyed. The containment field is controlled by 17 different systems working together. Each system makes billions of calculations per second. Your human minds cannot process this level of complexity. Maybe not, Jake said. But can we see the simple version? Just show us what each system is trying to do. Another alien engineer, a furry creature called Vorthak, spoke up. Why are we wasting time with this? We should evacuate the ship and let the quantum core explode safely away from the fleet. Admiral Zexathera, who had been watching quietly, shook her head. If we lose this ship, we lose our command center. The fleet will not be able to coordinate against the Void Swarm. Billions will die. Commander Blake Turner entered the engine room at that moment. Blake was the human liaison officer, responsible for all the humans in the fleet. He was older than Jake and Lisa, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been in meetings with the fleet commanders for hours. How much time do we have? Blake asked. Maybe 30 minutes, Rithmal answered. The containment field is at 15% and dropping. Blake looked at Jake and Lisa. What do you two think? We think the quantum core is fighting itself, Jake said. Like when you have two people trying to steer the same car, but they're turning the wheel in opposite directions. That is impossible, said Vorthak. The control systems are designed to work together perfectly. Lisa stood up and walked to the control panel. Can you show us what happens when you try to stabilize the field? Rithmal touched the controls. The three-dimensional picture changed to show the containment field getting tighter around the quantum core. For a few seconds, the core's red flashing slowed down, but then it got worse, flashing even faster than before. See, Lisa said, when you try to hold it tighter, it fights back harder. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. The harder you push, the more it wants to pop back up. Jake nodded. What if we stop trying to control it perfectly? What if we let it move a little bit but guide it in the right direction? That would be dangerous, Rithmal said. Quantum fields must be contained precisely. Any variation could cause an explosion. But it's already varying, Lisa pointed out. And it's going to explode anyway if we don't try something different. Admiral Zexthara looked at the failing quantum core, then at her alien engineers, then at the two humans. What exactly are you proposing? Jake took a deep breath. We want to stop fighting the quantum field and start working with it. Instead of trying to make it perfectly steady, we want to let it bounce around in a safe way. Like shock absorbers on a car. Shock absorbers? Vorthak asked. Springs and cushions that let the wheels bounce when you hit a bump, Lisa explained. Instead of braking when you hit something, the car just bounces and keeps going. The aliens looked at each other. The idea of letting a quantum field bounce went against everything they had learned about engineering. Their technology was based on precision and control. The human idea seemed wild and dangerous, but the quantum core was now flashing so fast that the red light looked almost solid. Time was running out. Admiral Zexathara stood silent for a long moment. The quantum core's red flashing was now so fast that it hurt to look at. The crackling sounds had become a steady roar. Through the ship's communication system, voices reported that other systems were failing as the core's wild energy damaged circuits throughout the vessel. How long would your solution take to implement? She asked Jake and Lisa. Jake looked at the quantum core, then at Lisa. They had talked about their idea, but actually doing it would be much harder. Maybe 20 minutes if everything goes right, he said. We have 15 minutes before containment failure, Rithmal said. And that is if the degradation rate stays the same. It could accelerate. Lisa walked around the quantum core looking at it from different angles. We'll need to build bypass channels around the containment field, like pressure release valves. Pressure release valves on a quantum containment system? Vorthak made a sound that might have been laughter or disbelief. This is madness. Commander Blake stepped forward. Admiral, I recommend we let them try. If it doesn't work, we're no worse off than we are now. Admiral Zexathara's 4 eyes moved between the humans and her experienced alien engineers. The Azanites had thousands of years of knowledge. The other species had even more. But all of that knowledge was failing right now. Very well, she said, but I want all non-essential personnel to evacuate to the outer hull sections. If this fails, I don't want to lose the entire crew. We're staying, Rithmal said firmly. If the humans are wrong, someone needs to try to contain the explosion, Guai felt his hand shaking as he realized what they were about to attempt. They were going to modify the most advanced piece of technology in the galaxy, using principles they had learned from fixing cars and water pumps. Lisa was already moving toward the storage area where spare parts were kept. Jake, we need conductive, materials that can handle high energy loads, and we need them to be flexible. What about these? Jake held up several coils of heavy cable that were normally used for emergency repairs. The cables were made of a metal alloy that could carry enormous amounts of electricity. Perfect, Lisa said. Now we need something to control the flow, like valves, but for energy instead of water. Rithmal watched them with growing concern. Those cables are not designed for quantum field manipulation. They will burn out instantly. Not if we don't run the full field through them, Jake said. We're just making overflow channels. When the pressure gets too high, some energy can escape through the cables instead of building up in the core. Lisa was already connecting the cables to ports around the base of the quantum core. Her movements were quick and sure, like she was working on a familiar machine instead of alien technology. Engineer Sam Collins arrived with 3 other humans from different parts of the ship. Sam was a big man with strong arms who usually worked on the ship's hull repairs. Blake told us you needed help with some heavy work, he said. We need to wrap these cables around the quantum core in a spiral pattern, Lisa explained. Like the coils in an old electric motor. How do you know this will work? Asked Vorthak. Your calculations are based on primitive technology. Jake was connecting the other end of the cables to a control panel that he was building from spare. We don't know if it will work, he admitted. But we know that fighting the quantum field isn't working. The humans worked quickly while the aliens watched. Sam and his team used physical strength to position the heavy cables around the core. They had to work carefully because the energy field around the core was now strong enough to cause burns. Lisa rigged up a monitoring system using parts from 3 different machines. It looked crude compared to the alien equipment, but it could measure the energy flow through their improvised cables. The containment field is down to 8%, announced an alien technician. All personnel should evacuate immediately. We're almost done, Jake said. His hands moved over the control panel, making final connections. Sweat was dripping into his eyes, but he didn't stop to wipe it away. The quantum core suddenly made a sound like thunder. Everyone in the room was knocked off their feet as the ship shook violently. When Jake got back up, he saw that several of the alien monitoring systems were sparking and smoking. 7 minutes until complete failure, Rithmal said. His calm voice couldn't hide the fact that he was now standing near the exit, ready to run. Lisa looked at Jake. It's ready. Are you sure about this? Jake's throat felt dry. If they were wrong, the explosion would kill everyone on the ship and probably destroy several other ships in the fleet. But if they did nothing, the result would be the same. Do it, he said. Lisa activated their improvised control system. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the cables began to glow with a soft blue light. Energy was flowing through them, taking some of the pressure off the quantum core. The red flashing of the core began to slow down. The wild crackling sounds became quieter, but the core was still unstable. It's not enough, Jake said. We need more bypass channels. There's no time to build more cables, Sam said. Lisa was staring at the control panel. Suddenly, her eyes widened. Jake, what if we don't try to make it steady? What if we let it pulse but control the timing of the pulses? Like a heartbeat, Jake said, understanding immediately. Instead of steady flow, we let it pump in rhythm. Jake's hands flew over the controls. Instead of trying to smooth out the quantum field's natural pulsing, he began to work with it. He adjusted the bypass channels to open and close in time with the core's rhythm. The change was immediate. The quantum core's red flashing became steady and regular. The crackling sounds turned into a deep, rhythmic humming. The violent shaking stopped. "Containment field stabilizing," reported one of the alien technicians in amazement. "Energy output is increasing?" Everyone stared at the quantum core. Not only had it stopped failing, but it was now producing more power than it had before. The crisis began. The rough, pulsing rhythm that the humans had created was actually more efficient than the smooth, steady flow that the aliens had designed. Admiral Zexathera looked at her instruments, then at Jake and Lisa. "How is this possible?" Lisa wiped grease from her hands with a rag. "Sometimes things work better when you don't fight their natural behavior," she said. "My grandfather always said that the best engines aren't the prettiest ones. They're the ones that keep running when everything else breaks down." News of the quantum core repair spread through the eternal dawn like wildfire. Within hours, every being on the massive ship knew that 2 humans had saved them all, using methods that the galaxy's best engineers couldn't understand. Jake sat in the ship's cafeteria, trying to eat his dinner while aliens from different species kept coming up to stare at him. A group of young Velkari engineers approached his table, their blue skin bright with excitement. "Is it true that you used combustion engine principles on a quantum drive?" one of them asked. Jake looked uncomfortable with all the attention. "We just listened to what the engine was trying to tell us," he said. "It wanted to pulse instead of staying steady, so we let it pulse." Meanwhile, Lisa was in Engineering Section 7, where 3 different ships had sent their chief engineers to learn about the human modifications. She stood in front of a group of aliens who towered over her, but her voice was confident as she explained their methods. "The key is not to fight the natural behavior of the system," she said, pointing to a diagram on the wall. "Instead of forcing it to be perfect, we guide it to be stable." Commander Blake Turner was in Admiral Zexathera's office reviewing reports from across the fleet. Other ships were requesting human engineering consultants to examine their systems. Word was spreading that humans had a different way of solving problems. The crystalline Dominion ship, Star of Kepler, is experiencing microfractures in their hull, Admiral Zexathera said, reading from her screen. "Their engineers can't understand why the self-repair systems aren't working." Blake nodded. "I'll send Engineer Martinez and Specialist Johnson. They have experience with metal fatigue from their work on Earth's orbital platforms." Dr. Rachel Stone, the fleet's human science officer, was working late in her laboratory. She was trying to understand why the human approach to the quantum core had worked so well. Her computer screens showed energy flow patterns that didn't match any known physics models. Rachel was a woman in her 40s with short gray hair and curious eyes. She had spent her whole career studying how different technologies worked. Now she was looking at something that shouldn't work according to everything she knew, but somehow did. "Computer, compare the current quantum core energy pattern with Standard Galactic Alliance specifications," she said. "Current pattern deviates from standard specifications by 47%, the computer replied. "However, energy output is 31% higher than specification requirements." Rachel frowned at the numbers. The human modifications had made the quantum core wrong according to galactic standards, but it was working better than ever. She began to see a pattern in how humans approached problems differently from other species. Captain Roy Martinez was aboard the cargo ship Heavy Lifter, working with a team of insectoid engineers. The ship's loading systems had been jamming, frequently causing delays in supply runs to the front lines. Roy was a short, stocky man with steady hands and 30 years of experience fixing things that other people couldn't fix. He watched the alien engineers work with their precise tools and perfect procedures, but the loading system kept jamming every few hours. "What happens when something unexpected gets loaded?" Roy asked the chief insectoid engineer, whose name was Click 74. "Nothing unexpected gets loaded," Click 74 replied. "Everything is measured and cataloged precisely before it goes into the system." Roy walked over to look at the loading mechanism. It was beautiful, smooth metal curves and perfectly calculated movements. But he noticed something the aliens hadn't seen. "What about dust?" he asked. "Dust? Small particles, bits of debris, things that are too small to catalog, but big enough to cause friction." Click 74's compound eyes looked confused. "The system filters are designed to remove all particles above 0.1 millimeters. Roy knelt down and ran his finger along the inside of the loading chute. When he held up his finger, it was covered with fine dust particles smaller than the filters could catch. "This stuff builds up over time. Eventually, it causes the system to stick. But the specifications say that particles smaller than 0.1 millimeters will not affect system performance," Click 74 said. "Specifications don't always match reality," Roy replied. He pulled out a simple brush and began cleaning the dust from the mechanism. Sometimes you have to account for things that shouldn't matter but do. Back on the Eternal Dawn, Jake and Lisa were called to Admiral Zexathera's command center. The large room was filled with holographic displays showing the positions of ships throughout the fleet. The void swarm was visible as a dark cloud of red dots approaching their position. "The quantum core modifications have given us 30% more power," Admiral Zexathera said. "But some of my commanders are concerned about the stability of human engineering methods." General Hythkos appeared on one of the holographic displays. He was from the crystalline Dominion, a species that looked like living gemstones. His form sparkled with many colors, but his voice was sharp with disapproval. "These human methods are dangerous," he said. "They ignore established safety protocols. Their modifications could fail at any moment, causing catastrophic damage." Lisa stepped forward. "General, our modifications have been running for 8 hours without any problems. The quantum core is more stable now than it was before the crisis." "Stability based on primitive principles," General Hythkos replied. "Your species has only had spaceflight for 500 years. The crystalline Dominion has been building starships for 50,000 years. We know what works and what doesn't." J.K. felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "With respect, General, your 50,000 years of experience didn't solve the quantum core problem. Sometimes a fresh perspective helps." "Fresh perspective or dangerous ignorance?" General Hythkos asked. "I am requesting that the Alliance Command review all human modifications before they are implemented fleet-wide." Admiral Zexathera looked thoughtful. "The humans have proven their methods work, but General Hythkos raises valid concerns about safety and standardization." Dr. Rachel Stone entered the command center at that moment, carrying a data pad with her research results. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the human modifications. I think I understand why they work so well." She activated a holographic display that showed 2 different engineering approaches. One was the traditional alien method, smooth, precise, and perfectly controlled. The other was the human approach, rougher, with built-in flexibility and multiple backup systems. "Galactic engineering focuses on optimization," Rachel explained. "Every system is designed to work perfectly under ideal conditions. Human engineering focuses on reliability. Our systems are designed to keep working even when conditions aren't ideal. But optimal systems are superior to reliable systems," said Vorthak, who had been listening from his station. "Not always," Rachel replied. "When the quantum core started failing, it created conditions that weren't ideal. The optimal systems couldn't adapt. The reliable systems could." Admiral Zexathera studied the displays. "Are you saying that human engineering is better than galactic standards?" "Not better," Rachel said. "Different, and sometimes different is exactly what you need." The attack came without warning. One moment the fleet was moving steadily toward the void swarm, and the next moment, every ship was shaking as strange energy waves washed over them. Jake was thrown against a wall as the Eternal Dawn lurched sideways. Emergency lights began flashing red throughout the ship. Over the communication system, Admiral Zexathera's voice was tense but controlled. "All ships report status immediately." "What just hit us?" Captain Williams from the cruiser Star Hunter was the first to respond. "Admiral, all our navigation systems just went offline. We're flying blind out here." "Same here. reported Captain Vextar from the destroyer. Quick strike. Communications are down to emergency backup only. Lisa ran into the engine room where Jake was checking the quantum core. The human modifications were still working perfectly, but everything around them was failing. Alien-built computers were shutting down, advanced sensors were going dark, and the ship's weapon systems were powering down. "It's some kind of interference pattern," Rithmal said, his voice shaking with confusion. "The Void Swarm is broadcasting, something that's disrupting all our technology." Through the ship's windows, Jake could see other Alliance vessels drifting helplessly. Their lights were flickering on and off, and several ships were spinning slowly as their attitude controls failed. Dr. Rachel Stone's voice came over the communication system. "Admiral, I'm reading massive electromagnetic disruption across all frequencies. It's like nothing I've ever seen. The pattern is designed to interfere with precise electronic systems." Admiral Zexathara appeared in the engine room, her 4 arms crossed with worry. "How long before our systems completely fail?" "At this rate, maybe 15 minutes, Rithmal replied. "The interference is getting stronger." Jake looked at Lisa. "Our modifications are still working." "Because they're not precise," Lisa said, understanding immediately. "The interference is designed to disrupt exact frequencies and perfect timing. Our rough pulsing system isn't exact enough to be disrupted." Commander Blake Turner's voice came through the communication system. "All human engineers report to emergency stations immediately. We may be the only ones who can keep the fleet operational." Jake and Lisa ran through the corridors toward the communication center. They passed groups of alien crew members standing around broken equipment, looking lost and confused. The humans on the ship were the only ones who seemed to know what to do. In the communication center, they found Engineer Martinez working frantically on the main transmitter. The sophisticated alien communication system had completely failed, but Martinez was connecting simple radio equipment that the humans had brought from Earth. "The fancy quantum communication array can't handle the interference," Martinez explained. "But these old-style radios work on different principles. They're not precise enough for the Void Swarm to disrupt." Captain Roy Martinez joined them from another ship via the human radio system. "Same story over here," he said. "All the alien tech is failing, but our backup systems are still running." Admiral Zexathara listened to the radio chatter with growing amazement. The humans were coordinating repairs across the entire fleet using technology that other species considered primitive. But it was working when nothing else could. "How can we help the other ships?" she asked Jake. "We need to get human engineers onto every vessel," Jake replied. "And we need to modify their systems with human-style redundancy and flexibility." "There isn't time," said Rithmal. "The Void Swarm will reach us in 2 hours. We have over 300 ships in this fleet." Lisa was studying the interference pattern on her simple scanner. "What if we don't modify every system? What if we just modify the most important ones?" "Which systems?" Admiral Zexthera asked. "Engines, weapons, and communications," Jake said. "If we can keep ships moving, fighting, and talking to each other, we can win this battle." Admiral Zexathera made a fleet-wide announcement. "All ships are to accept human engineering teams immediately. Human engineers have full authority to modify any system necessary for battle readiness. Any captain who refuses this order will answer directly to me." General Hythkos appeared on the communication screen, his crystalline form flickering with angry colors. "This is madness. You're going to let primitive humans modify our most advanced starships?" "Our most advanced starships are dead in space," Admiral Zexathera replied firmly. "The primitive humans are the only ones keeping us alive." Over the next 90 minutes, human engineers spread across the fleet like a medical team treating wounded patients. They carried simple tools and spare parts, moving from ship to ship in small transport pods. On the battleship Iron Fist, engineer Patricia Wong worked with a team of Volcari warriors to modify their weapon systems. The aliens watched in disbelief as she replaced precise targeting computers with simpler systems that relied on manual adjustment. "But these systems are less accurate," protested the Volcari weapons officer. "Less accurate, but they work," Patricia replied. "Sometimes a working gun that hits half the time is better than a perfect gun that doesn't fire at all." On the science vessel, Deep Thought, Engineer Carlos Rivera was helping alien scientists modify their sensor arrays. Instead of trying to get perfect readings, they rigged the sensors to give rough approximations that the interference couldn't disrupt. "We won't be able to analyze molecular composition," complained the chief scientist, a tall ethereal with glowing eyes. "But you'll be able to tell where the enemy ships are," Carlos replied. "Right now, that's more important." Jake found himself on the command ship Victory's Edge with General Hithkos himself. The crystalline general watched coldly as Jake worked on the ship's navigation system. "This is humiliating," General Hithkos said. "My people built starships when yours were still living in caves." Jake looked up from his work. "General, I respect your people's achievements, but right now, we need solutions that work, not solutions that are perfect." "And what happens after the battle?" General Hithkos asked. "Do we abandon 50,000 years of progress and build ships like primitive humans?" "No," Jake replied, connecting the last cable in his modification. "You keep building ships your way, and we'll keep building ships our way. And when something comes along that your perfect ships can't handle, our rough ships will be there to help." The navigation system came online with a rough, flickering display that showed approximate positions instead of perfect coordinates. But it was working, and working was all that mattered. 1 hour before the Void Swarm reached the fleet, Admiral Zexithara received reports from across all ships. Engines were running on human-modified power systems that pulsed and hummed but kept moving the ships forward. Weapons were firing using targeting systems that were less precise but could still hit their targets. Communications were working through networks of simple radios that the interference couldn't touch. The battle itself was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Void Swarm's machines tried to disrupt the Alliance fleet with their interference weapons. But the human modifications made the ships immune to precise disruption. The rough, flexible systems adapted to whatever the enemy threw at them. Jake stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn as the final Void Swarm machines were destroyed. The quantum core hummed with its steady, imperfect rhythm, providing power for the victory celebration that was spreading across the fleet. Admiral Zexithara approached him with a formal document in her hands. "Lieutenant Morrison, by order of the Galactic Alliance Command, you are hereby promoted to Chief Engineering Advisor for the entire fleet." She turned to Lisa. "Petty Officer Rodriguez, you are appointed as the first director of the new Interspecies Engineering Academy, where human adaptability principles will be taught alongside traditional galactic precision methods." Lisa looked surprised. "You want us to teach aliens how to build things the human way?" "We want you to teach everyone how to build things that work," Admiral Zexithara replied. "Whether they're perfect or not." In the months that followed, human engineers became a permanent part of every Alliance ship. They worked alongside alien engineers, combining human flexibility with galactic precision to create ships that were both advanced and reliable. The Eternal Dawn continued its missions throughout the galaxy, its quantum core humming with the rough, steady rhythm that only human hands had been able to create. It was not the sound of perfection, but it was the sound of something better. The sound of things that worked, no matter what the universe threw at them. And in engineering departments across the galaxy, young beings from dozens of species learned a new principle that their ancestors had never taught them. Sometimes the best solution isn't the perfect one, but the one that keeps working when everything else breaks down.